Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Ask a DM, a D&D Q&A show where I bring on a guest DM each week and we answer your questions. So we take questions from the live chat and I take questions from Twitter and my Discord before the show as well. So if you do want to ask any questions and you're in the live chat, if you just put question before your question, then we know that you're talking to us rather than just talking amongst yourself. And if you're watching this after the fact, feel free to put some questions down in the comments of this video or go across to my Twitter or my Discord, which are down in the description, and you can ask me some questions there, and then I'll get to them next week with whoever the guest is next week. I also did a giveaway for Fizzband's Treasury of Dragons, and I announced on Twitter that the winner was Tom Gallagher, I think is how you say it. I might be completely butchering that name. So congratulations to you, Tom, and there is a book on its way to you as we speak. But without further ado, let me bring in our guest, the Bear Bard. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I am the Bear Bard with Bear Bard Tales.
Cool. And how we start it is we always ask you some questions just so everyone can get a bit of a gist of what type of DM you are. So the first one is, do you usually homebrew or run modules when you DM?
So I tend to like homebrew. Homebrew is kind of like what drew me into D&D, like at all. All the previous adventures and stuff, sounded really cool. But being able to make up your own stuff like that, to me, that's always been like the coolest aspect. So which is funny because right this second I'm actually going through a module, uh, the Waterdeep Dragon Heist, and so I'm having a lot of fun with that. But I'm taking it and heavily modifying it. Most of the characters are pretty much unrecognizable to what they are in the thing. And then again, we're on chapter 2 where it opens up a bit, and we've just been there for like 2-3 months, just building up the business. I don't want to give away too much about the book, but it opens up and you can kind of do whatever. So I'm just letting them run quests, and they're a level higher than you're supposed to be at this point in the book. So yeah, I mean, I'm challenging myself with a module, and some of them seem fun, but I tend to like homebrew more.
Yeah, it seems that's quite a common way of doing it amongst the YouTubers. I don't think I've had a guest on yet that has said module. They all say homebrew, and then sometimes they run the module but heavily edit it. So that's quite interesting. And so, what sort of level is your favorite to DM as well?
So truthfully have only been able to do so much as far as like how high. I think the highest I've DM'd was 10. And I kind of like that. I feel like I like so in video games, I tend to like to start new games and have like weak characters that I like, and I like seeing that build up. So I don't tend to like the god mode. Hey, you're just destroying everything because you're so amazing. So I actually like starting from level 1. I like playing level 1. And actually, I'm putting a game together now where you actually start at level 0, and then they would grow
Okay.
into their classes. Uh, I know that's kind of like a weird thing. I think a lot of people like one of my players every game. He's just like, so we leveled up, right? So we leveled. He's a bit of a power gamer. So, but I tend to like the lower levels just because I feel like you have to be more creative, and you have to struggle more because you don't have like, oh, if only I had this, automatic easy win button.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
I
at level
think
7.
there is a charm to level 1 as well, where well, it happens to me a lot where people come in, they've created this completely epic character who's amazing, and then 3 sessions in, they're actually a bumbling idiot because they've made a few
Yeah.
dice rolls that have gone sour. I really like the idea actually about doing a level 0 and then getting your class, or like going into your class. That's a really interesting idea actually. You'll have to let us know how that goes and how you do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to create a system where instead of like being everyone starts with the same numbers, and then you can through different actions you do. I'm trying to put together a system of where you could earn points. So like you want to be a mage, well, you have to go earn those points to be a mage.
Oh,
So these actions that you do beforehand will dictate what class you are ahead of time, as opposed to predetermining that yourself.
it's cool. That's a really cool idea. Um, what other question? I think that's probably about it. What we do with questions for your DMing style, and we'll jump straight into the questions here. So the first one is from How to D&D, Fred over at that channel on YouTube, and he's asked, "Why do you focus on D&D horror stories in your videos?" Um, Oh, we should probably mention to everyone actually just explain what sort of style of videos you do, because it's a little bit different to mine.
Yeah. So I'm a D&D kind of, I guess, horror story narrator. I don't do just horror stories, but it tends to be the bulk of what I do because that's what people like to hear. People like to watch Maury because it's the drama. So it's mainly horror stories, but I do have some glory stories. Actually, not this last video, but last week it was a horror story, but it was more of a fun one. So yeah, I do D&D narration, but beyond that, I like to try to break down the stories and give a lot of tips from those. So instead of just reading, the story at face value, I try to get lessons from it and things that maybe were done well, not so well, things that we could, sorry, I gotta message. Things that people can improve on it and ways to have prevented it. So, a lot of times it comes down to like communication. This story happens and it's because of something, super crazy simple that could have solved it all or whatever. So, but yeah, that's why I do the narration. I think I was telling you beforehand. I originally started it actually not to do YouTube. I wasn't trying to be like get into YouTube and all that stuff. I was literally just trying to have a work on my voice diction. Try to do some voice acting stuff, and then I just really liked it and got more into it. And I love D&D and all that kind of stuff. So it's been a great way of I've been able to interact with some really awesome people and do that whole thing.
That's really cool. And I have put down in the description links to go across and check out his videos. Because it's very interesting, different to pretty much every YouTuber I've seen. So go and check that out. But now you have context, people actually understand this question a bit better.
Yeah.
So yeah, why do you focus more on horror stories then in your videos?
What I really like is that it gives examples. I was always subscribed to the I could make mistakes myself, or I can look at other people's mistakes and learn from it. And I feel like there's a lot of lessons to be learned from a lot of these horror stories, even the horror story. Because the problem with horror stories and anything written on the internet is that it may not be 100% true, right? A lot of these stories can be overblown or just things changed within it. So. Maybe the core of it's correct, but the rest of it isn't, but you can still get a lot of lessons from that. So, you see how people react to situations. There was a short story I just read in this last video that's a perfect example. This person made a character and then someone else made the same character. So he was just like, well, I guess now my character is obsolete. Should I just give up and not play anymore? And I think the problem is like the other guy could have totally not thought that. The other guy could have been, thinking like, well, he's a quasi, semi healer. So maybe if I do it as well, it helps him, and it's just like, okay, well, cool. Now, next time I'm going into making a character, now I can think like, oh, are they going to be mad at this? If I were the same dress to the party, are they going to get annoyed with me for doing that? It takes, you can get a lot of really good examples of what not to do, and then other things of what you can do, looking at these stories and seeing what has and hasn't worked for other people. And I think that's a really, sometimes it's a more fun way of learning these lessons as opposed to just, reading the player's handbook. And you should also definitely read the player's. That's not me advocating for not reading it, but sometimes some of these lessons, it's nice to learn from other people's mistakes as opposed to making it ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a good, unique way to learn. Cool. Okay, I don't have anything to add to that one because it's all about your videos. So we'll jump on to the next one. So over on Twitter, the Home Bakery asked, so we have dwarfs, gnomes, halflings, and now fairies. Can we go smaller, and should we go smaller? So this is with player character races. Do you think there should be smaller races than fairies?
So I'm 6'3" in real life. And I tend to only play short races. Not like I'm not like I only will, but when I played World of Warcraft, I played gnomes and dwarves, and I tend to like short races. Right now, I'm playing a kobold in the game I'm playing in. That being said, I don't know if we should go shorter because like fairies right now, if I recall, they can get like a foot tall, correct? Like the new. Yeah,
I can double check, but I'm pretty sure that's about right.
Yeah, any small, and that's that. I think that's too small. I think that if you're a fairy, like you should. I mean, like think of a kobold's what 2.5 feet. Like actually think about what 2.5 feet is for. I mean, American. You
It's
can think
small.
about less than a meter for for everyone else in the world. Uh, that's pretty small, and at that point, you start having to worry about you know and I tend to just kind of like overlook the fact like, hey, you have a great sword. Well, you have a great sword made for a gnome. Uh, so I think any less than that, it starts getting kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm not. That's not saying that it can't be done, especially if you wanted to do a whole campaign around it, like a Honey I Shrunk the Kids situation.
Mm.
Something like that could be fun. But I think less than a foot, like that's just getting to almost pet territory, like sentient pet. And so
Yeah. I think what you said there actually is a good point, that already it is a little bit ridiculous thinking about a gnome with a greatsword that also an orc could use, or a Goliath could use. So if you did go smaller and like you had something that was inches, they're not going to be able to have a proper weapon really, or like a proper greatsword anyway. They'd have to have daggers and stuff. So yeah, I would agree that you probably shouldn't go any smaller than fairy. It gnomes, halflings, dwarfs, all fine, and kobolds. But yeah, I wouldn't go any smaller than fairies unless, as you said, it is a part of the story, or it's like a thing that
yeah,
you're all small and you have to try to make it in the world as small creatures or something like that.
yeah.
But
Especially you have someone in a group. One person's a Goliath, one person's a half of 6-inch freaking whatever that new race is. Like it just seems silly, like planning wise, to
yeah,
be able to
definitely.
accommodate both.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, the next question is what tools do you use to create maps? But I guess the first question is, do you use maps?
So mainly what we've been doing is just online stuff. Unfortunately, with the big thing, I guess you're not allowed to say it, right? It said that shall not be named. Uh, so I have I use Foundry. And I want to preference that by saying I'm not one of the cool kids that has like good Foundry that has all the tools. I use Foundry at its very base level, and just I haven't had time to really dig into it and get a bunch. So I have a couple maps that I've used in there, but mainly I just draw it. I have I don't know whoever if anyone's familiar with Foundry, you can have different scenes, and one of the scenes I just leave blank, and so I leave it blank, and then when I get to a thing, I just switch to that, draw it out, and slap everyone down. So it's essentially just using a blank map that you'd use on a table, but I do it on Foundry, and so in person I would just probably end up doing the same thing. It's just drawing it out as I need it. I
So,
respect people that can really like actually go all out and build their own stuff. I just haven't. I don't have that kind of time right now.
yeah. So you don't use any tools like Incarnate or Dungeon Fog or anything like that to actually create your maps?
I have a folder on my computer in my Brave browser that has all of those things set to the side so I can play with them and build maps. I just haven't done it.
Just haven't done it yet.
I want to. It's just I got a 3-year-old that work full time and then the YouTube and so it's just taking the time to actually do it. At some point I'd like to. Both Carnage and the Fog one I have bookmarked. I know, and then there's a couple others that I have that just through different D&D YouTubers that have had done an ad for it or whatever. I've looked it up. So at some point I will play around with that. But yeah, for the most part, it's just free drawn.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to go. I personally use Incarnate, and I've just started using Dungeon Fog actually, but I was mainly using Incarnate, a bit of Arkham Forge, and Flowscape if I'm feeling really fancy. Have you ever heard of Flowscape?
That's the one the other ones I heard of. I haven't heard of Flowscape.
So Flowscape, you can create a 3D model of an environment. So it's not just a top-down map like in that you would usually do in D&D. You can actually make a 3D map. So like you can walk around in trees and in buildings and stuff. And it is really cool, but it is just very time consuming to make because you have to like put the trees in, choose the ground and all this kind of stuff. But you can make some really cool scenes and cool maps with it.
That sounds really cool. You said there's a Steam game that's like that. It was a Kickstarter
Oh, yeah.
something Forge, I think. Or it was like,
I know what you're on about. I can't remember what it's called either.
yeah, but yeah,
Um,
it's someone was telling me about that. How they were building a bunch of environments in there. I think it's still like pre-release, but it's been out for like a year, so I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we've got so how to D&D. Fred has just dropped in saying hi, Shrike. We did already answer the question that you gave us beforehand. Unfortunately, you missed it, but you can go back and listen to that. But you've put in another question here. So, what is your favorite monster, and how would you use it in a fun and interesting way?
Favorite monster. See, I'm boring. I love dragons. I love all different types of dragons, and so what I like to do is um take dragons from just different parts of mythology, different forms of dragons, and throw those in there. Um, and then sometimes I like, because I have most of my group likes like classic horror, so I'll throw some of that in, and I'm simple. I'll just take and replace something current's stats, and I'll make stuff up like that. I also like it, and I also like, again, maybe not to sound too boring, kind of like the classic goblins. I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, so there's something good just about a good old goblin fight. Just get just a ton of them, and you get the watermelon blowing up effect kind of when you just start tearing through that. So
Yeah, I on that same note as well, I quite often will throw kobolds at new players. I'll get them to go and clear out something that's kobold related to teach them about traps as well. Because in my head, kobolds have like silly traps, like like the whole log swinging
yeah.
from a tree style stuff. So I like using kobolds as like a little silly, like they run around and shout and are a bit crazy, but they've got traps. So kobolds have a bit of a place in my heart. Probably favorite monster is going to have to be a beholder for me. I just love a beholder. I love the anti-magic field plus the crazy rays. And I like a hag as well. I use hags probably too much. I just like how scary they can be. Like that they can, if they get in a coven and stuff like that, they can actually become quite powerful without people realizing very quickly. So I sort of play around with that quite a lot.
There you go. Yeah, underestimated a bit. I know my players almost got a hag in last. Basically, there was a right or left situation, and they chose the other way, but they almost ran into a hag.
Nice. Yeah, I do like a hag. If so, as dragons are sort of your favorite, what did you think about Fizban's Dragons of Treasury? Have you had a look
I
at it?
want to check it out. I haven't yet. I've looked at. Like, I think I've seen a couple different videos on it and stuff like that. I want to check it out. It really is comes down to time and and everything. But I'm picking it up soon. I think after this next paycheck, I'm going to pick it up, and because people are saying it's a good one for dragons. It sounds like it's pretty limited, but if you like dragons like I do, it's a good.
Yeah, I guess it is sort of limited in a way because it's got so many different dragons. But realistically, in one campaign, how many dragons are you going to throw at your party? You're not going to throw like an Elder Brain dragon and then an Emerald dragon and then a red dragon. Well, I guess you could if you hated your players and just wanted to try to kill them. But yeah, generally, I guess that's right. The next question as well we sort of touched on, so let's jump into that as well. So, which do you do more, monsters straight from the manual or make your own?
So I like to modify monster manual monsters, and so my group that I play with, they're pretty strong. I have one that's kind of a superpower gamer. He's not annoying about it. He's kind of like how it should be. Like he likes to do the big damage, but he also like he does a ton of damage, like one shots things. So what I like to take him and make him a bit beefier. And maybe add a couple. So maybe sometimes give things double strike that don't have it, or that kind of thing. So I'll start with a regular one. Something that people that, oh yeah, I've faced that before. I know their stat line. Like you think their stat line, but yeah. So that's what I tend to do. I'll make up my own, but usually again, what I'll do is I'll just take they don't have one for this monster. Cool. I'll just put it in here and I'll take the stat line from this similar type thing and then bring it over. So I don't
Yeah.
tend to just make everything from scratch myself.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. I rarely will make stuff from scratch. If I make something, it's usually just a reflavored something else. I just take the stats from something else and then make it into something new. I it also depends if my players are new players or veteran players as well. Because if they're new players, I'll probably just use it straight out the manual because they don't know. Like if I throw a rust monster at them, they don't know that it's going to degrade their armor. Or if I throw a troll at them, they don't know it's going to regenerate. Whereas veteran ones do. So I might change it a little bit to shock them with something. But yeah, usually I would say I run it straight from the manual. So yeah,
that's fair. Yeah,
I've made a few of my own though. Actually, I'd made gem dragons before this new book came out. And then the new book came out, and I was like, well, that's a waste of time. I could have just used them. But yeah, that was my most recent one.
it's okay. You got to use gem dragons before they were cool. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I did a stream game on my just an 8-episode streamed game on my thing, which was based all around gem dragons. And then they announced Fizzbans, and I was like, it's like I knew. I definitely didn't, but I can pretend.
That's when you got to sue Wizards. Now you got to be like, hey, you guys, this what's up. I thought, you guys took this from me. It was streamed clearly.
Yeah. But yeah, it hasn't been in the works for 3 years, I'm sure.
Well, too, I live about 2 hours from Wizards of the Coast. I'll go down there for you.
Oh, do you actually? Nice. You should just go out there, try and work out what book they're on now. Hopefully, a Spelljammer book is going to be next. That's what I'm waiting for. I've been waiting for a while, but it doesn't seem to be coming. So we got another one from Fred at How to D&D. Do you use traps in your games? How do you use them in your games so they are interesting to players?
So I'm going to be 100% honest. I will lay traps and then forget about them until the players are well past them. I am notorious for forgetting my traps. Because one time because when you mentioned the kobolds earlier, it reminded me. At one point I set up this really cool kobold cave, and I was looking into them, like, oh, they do all these traps and stuff like that. This is going to be awesome. And I set up like a ton of these. Like half the traps were really good, half of them were really stupid and wouldn't have worked, but something would have happened still. And I was really excited about it. And I remembered maybe like 5 of them. I set up probably 15 of them, and only like 5 of it at the whole time. I just saw, I like the idea of traps as long as it's something that they can see. I don't like the idea of setting up a trap that's like undetectable. Any trap I set up, my players can avoid. Just like, the theoretically real life is that I don't like to set up unavoidable traps, but I'm notorious for just forgetting about my traps.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm similar. I do use traps, but they're always, well, I say always. It depends how creative, I guess, the players get of how to avoid the trap. But I wouldn't do a trap which I didn't think they could avoid. How much I probably don't use traps that often, actually. If they were going into like some, I don't know, ancient ruins, or they were going into some dungeon of a wizard or something like that, where it's obvious there'd be traps, I would use them. But I've played in games actually where like they've just been walking in the woods and there's just been a bear trap for no reason, and someone stepped in a bear trap and like taken a d6 damage, and then we just carried on walking. And I don't really like traps when they use like that. I understand some people use traps to sort of take a bit of hit points off of people before they actually get involved in combat, which is fair enough. But once again, I feel like you have to give players the opportunity to be able to get around them or disarm them or set them off without getting hurt and stuff like that.
Yeah, truthfully, if I was going to do that, I'd rather just fudge my dice rolls and add a couple damage to with the enemies in them as opposed to traps. Yeah, it has to make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense for there to be a trap there, I'm not going to put a trap there.
Yeah, I do also quite enjoy having traps or environmental things in combat as well. That could be quite fun. So like recently I did one where there were mushrooms that released spores, and at the same time they got attacked by zombies, by like spore zombies.
Yeah.
And that's quite fun because then it becomes a case of they have to. So it on the map, it was obvious where these mushrooms were, and after the first one went off, they realised what the mushrooms were going to do, and then it became a case of, okay, do I just run through the mushroom because I need to get here and take the bit of damage, or do I run round but I won't get where I want to be on this turn, and stuff like that. So there's some quite interesting decisions they had to make.
No, that'd be fun to play with, like that kind of environmental hazards. That would be fun to play with. I haven't done that as much, but that sounds like a really cool little setup.
Yeah, definitely. I try to keep my combat exciting by adding environmental stuff. So it's quite rare I'll just have one level plane. I'll usually have some raised areas, some low areas, some difficult terrain, be it water or like marsh or whatever it is, to try and keep it a bit more interesting. Because I think you can quite easily fall into the trap of, how much do you hit for? 12 damage. Okay, they take 12 damage. Okay, they hit you for 4 damage. Okay, you hit them. And it's just back and forth how much. And it's just people get bored and lose interest and start scrolling on their phone and whatnot. So I try to keep it interesting. If I do or not, you have to ask my players, I guess.
I feel it. No, it sounds good. Yeah. I mean, and pretty much most of the times when the more layers you could add, the more complexity. At least, if nothing else, it keeps you more engaged.
Yeah, exactly. That's I guess one of the many hurdles that we have to get over as a DM is keeping the players engaged all the time, or as much as you can anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next one is, should players be able to hand a potion to another player as an action, bonus action, or free action? How would you rule that?
I would say it depends on what's going on around them. So if you are engaged in combat with somebody and you're a low level and you're not, I probably would say it would be an action. If you can, and a lot of times stuff like this, I'll give it up to my players, and if they can explain to me something feasible, I'll usually let them go for it. I I tend to kind of like make up rules on the fly, not make up rules on the fly, but I give a lot of leniency to the rules to my players. I tend to be fun over what's in the player's handbook. And so I would normally say an action as opposed to a bonus action. But, if I have two people that aren't like engaged in combat, it makes sense that he could just kind of pass it over real quick. And so, but if you have two guys in melee, swinging swords and having swords swing at them, they're not going to be able to just kind of quickly hand that off. So that's kind of how I would do it.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point there, that you can get the players to explain how they're doing it. Like, if you're thinking logically about it, I guess if there's just a potion which is just in your satchel, you're going to have to scrabble through your satchel, find the potion, get it out, hand it to a person, which takes quite long. But if your character has like potions on their belt or something like that, and they just have to unclip it and pass it across, it's a bit easier. I think in the past, what I've done is to hand it to another player. I've just done it as a bonus action. But there's been situations where one player's wanted to feed it to the other person, and then that's an action if they're unconscious or whatever.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I think that's how I'd run it. But to be honest, I think all three could be warranted. A free action is probably a bit too much to hand a potion across, but bonus action or action, I think both are fine, in my opinion.
That makes sense.
Cool. So we got Kickstand over on Twitch saying hello. How are you? How are you doing, the Bear Bard?
Hey, how you doing, Kickstand? 284111.
Yeah, 2841111. Thank you for coming by. Right, on to the next one. So how do you handle willpower? Or I guess, have you ever had to handle willpower? So how would you accommodate that lift the car off the child emotion fueled boost?
Yeah. So again, this is where I go to giving my players a chance. And so I like to reward creativity in my games. I was a theater kid in high school, and so I play with a number of other kids that are either theater kids or even if they didn't do theater, they tend to be more creative. And so I like to reward that. So explain it to me. Give me the situation. Why do you think that your character would have above and beyond knowledge or above and beyond ability in this situation. Hey, this is the guy who destroyed my village, and I've done this and I've done this. So cool. And so I tend to be very much situational, handout, +1s, -2s, plus that kind of thing, depending on the situation. Like just last night, one of my players got drunk, so I gave him +1 to charisma, but -2 to saving throws, that kind of thing. So I tend to be very free about plus and minus for a certain amount of time, depending on the situation, just because it makes sense. If you're dead tired at 2 a.m., you're not going to perform and do things the same way that you would at 2 p.m. in the afternoon when you're in the middle of the day and wide awake. So yeah, that's kind of how I handle that. I don't have a set rule for it. This is making me sound like the worst, like D&D player. Yeah, I tend to be very much fun over written rules, especially willpower. That's not really like, there's no written rule of willpower. It's kind of a fluffy thing anyway. And so that's how I like to handle it. If hey, here's a situation. Tell me why. Oh, okay. You can explain to me why you would care more and do more and try harder. Cool. You get a +2 for that, or +1 for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's good. The rule of cool is always good to keep in mind. I think what came to mind when I read this was there was a time where one of the characters died. One of the player characters died in my game, and another one that was like essentially the best friend used all of their abilities and then ran at the bad guy that just killed the player character, and I gave them advantage just out of the emotional turmoil that they just had. Like they would really want to kill that bad guy because they just killed the player character. And I think that's a good way to do it. Advantage and disadvantage have been a sort of 5e 5th edition way to simplify stuff like this. So if you as a DM think they should have advantage because of the willpower, whatever it is, just give them advantage. Or disadvantage if it's the other way. Like you said, if it's 2 a.m. and they're probably beaten down and had enough, you might want to give them disadvantage in a situation. Yeah, so that's how I would do it. Or, as you said, plus and minuses work as well.
Yeah.
Just as well.
Yeah, no, the only reason I tend not to give disadvantage, it just always feels so extreme, because I feel like, at least when I'm playing, if I ever have disadvantage, I always roll like a 3 or lower. I'll get like a 17 and then like a 2, like every single time.
Disheartening, isn't it?
Yeah, except for apparently when I'm DM, and I had a skeleton last night roll a 19 and a 20 when he had advantage. So
that's it. Especially if you're trying to be nice as a DM and that still happens, you're like, I'm going to give myself disadvantage to this, and then it still rolls really high. God damn it.
Yeah.
So Kicksan saying, I just got the free core books on D&D Beyond and is excited to play a homebrew campaign where I build a world as my characters go. Very nice. Hopefully it goes well. Let us know how it goes in the future weeks. And also asked a question, any tips or any way to make combat more fun? Because my combat is relatively bland.
Be fluid about it. That's kind of what I found. So I had a lot of trouble in the beginning balancing. And I know that's a lot of people, that's one of their toughest things they have is balance. And so keep it fluid. If you start a combat and all of a sudden your players just tear through the 5 goblins you have, well, sometimes goblins have more packs that come in, right? Have send in another wave, or don't be afraid to up the amount of health. Like with my skeletons, all of my skeletons, instead of having, I think they're supposed to have 13 health, I gave them all 17 health, because I know my players tend to be stronger. And then I said one had a fancy hat. That fancy hat had double strike. Don't be afraid to do little things like that and keep it fluid to make sure, because you have to react, because sometimes you'll set up an encounter and then all of your players suck, bad rolls. That was what I mean. Like, they don't suck as players, but all of a sudden everyone's rolling terrible. Well, cool. That second group that came by, this first combat that's already taken a good half hour, that second group, just leave them for the next time. So I tend to keep it fluid like that. I tend to be nice to my players though, so keep that in mind. I tend to be nice, and for me, it's we're all building a story and a game together as opposed to DM versus PCs.
Yeah,
And so I tend to be nice and do that. But you could even if you hate them, you could you can keep that same rule and just make it harder for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think the two tips that I would give that I think transformed my combat, one we spoke about a bit earlier, was adding in the environment. So adding in levels, adding in height. So that instead, if you're fighting in the street, maybe someone's jumped onto a roof and is firing arrows, and your players have to deal with that. Maybe there's a chasm nearby that people are trying to be thrown down and stuff like that. So use the environment. And then the other one, which I think made it much more interactive, was having the bad guys talk. So either talk to the players or talk to each other, like tactics. So, for example, when the cleric heals someone, have them shout out, "That one's a healer, kill them first," and then like change it like that, or just like shout stuff at the players. So if they miss, like actually have the person they missed say something like, you call that a swipe, and you just like mock them, and then it makes the players just hate them so much, want to kill them so much. And by doing that, I've also essentially they've made their own big bad, because there was like one that kept mocking them and then ended up running away, and they hated him so much that later on I was like, I'm going to bring him back in because they hated him so much. And then he was like a more critical part of the story than I originally thought he was going to do. So they're two sort of tips I would give. Yeah, and Kickstand has also then said, my combat goes like, you slice through the goblin's body and block the hit of the side goblin. So this is what we were talking about earlier. If combat sort of becomes, I hit them for 14 damage, they hit me for 12 damage, it does get a bit boring. So yeah, just add stuff like what we said, just a bit of banter between them, a bit of environment, a bit of
Flavor.
changing the stats. And another, what Bear said there, well, are you okay with being called Bear?
I'm cool. Yeah.
Yeah. As Bear said there as well, bring in other bad guys. So if you're in a goblin camp and they're fighting two goblins, is it reasonable that the 4 goblins around the corner herd? Maybe those 4 goblins are now going to come in, and it's going to change the dynamic because the players are now outnumbered and have to try and work out how to get around this problem. So yeah.
Also, I whenever a player kills, I let them describe how they die. So I think that's one thing too that helps is when you let the players kind of dictate some of that narrative. They get more fun into it, and then they get their image of there, instead of me just saying like, oh, I describe all the regular hits, but I let them, they tell me how they killed the enemy.
And then I just noticed as well, Kickstand just verified that he's actually playing D&D with himself. So I don't really have many tips of how to do that, to be honest, because I haven't done that. I have seen, who was it? Someone's put out a video of how you can play single player D&D. I can't remember who though. If you chuck into YouTube single player D&D, I'm sure I've seen a video about it. But yeah, I guess the whole getting the bad guys to shout at each other doesn't work when you're playing single player, because you're just shouting at yourself. But yeah, you then ended it saying that you don't really like socializing and you're working on your social skills. D&D is probably the best way I have found to improve your social skills. Like you can instantly just make friends after one session. You're like you bond with the people so well.
So and the one thing I'll say with that is that when I was a kid, I was like crazy shy. I couldn't talk to people. I had one friend, and in high school I got tricked into doing theater, and I say I was actually tricked. There was a girl who's like, oh, you should do theater with me. I'm like, oh, okay. No, me on stage, especially because beginning theater, they have like, the whole point is getting you comfortable. So there's like an animal unit where you get up on stage and pretend to be an animal, because like once you do that, everything else is easy. But yeah, but then she ended up, well, I think she moved away between that the freshman and sophomore year, so she didn't even take it, but I stuck with it, and it helped me a ton. I'm not, I'm still tend to be an introvert, but I can do like this. And so what I would say is really challenge yourself to do a D&D. There's a ton of really good people. I read horror stories and there's a lot of bad, but the horror stories really are the minority. If all you ever do is look at, r/RPG horror stories, you're going to think it's all bad, but there's a lot of amazing people and amazing games. And like you said, like I've online through, World of Warcraft or whatever, I've met some amazing people that I've had at my wedding and stuff like that. So I'm not saying it's going to be comfortable or easy, but I would say challenge yourself to do that, and just stick with a small group. Just have 3 or 4 people, but I'd look for something like that and try to get into a group like that, and just challenge yourself to step out and be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's jump on to the next one. So it's back to YouTube here. So how to D&D over on YouTube. It says, do you use puzzles in your game? What sort of puzzles do you use?
I'm getting to add more puzzles. Truthfully, I'm not, like, I haven't been DMing for like a ton of time, again, because of my time commitments I've had for the last my whole life. I'm now getting to a point where I'm like setting more time aside stuff, especially with YouTube. But so I haven't done a whole lot of stuff. I'm very much like, if it makes sense. So I've put some in, and because I love riddles, I love stuff like that. And puzzles, I've thrown a couple in, but I want to do more. I just haven't done a lot of like dungeon delving. I'm setting up a house again. I'm doing that Waterdeep, and I'm setting up a house that people that my group might be breaking into, and that's going to have some, it's gonna be made by a mage or wizard, so he's going to have some stuff like that. But I haven't done it as much as I'd like to, but I would like to get more into puzzles and such.
So my experiences with puzzles in D&D started quite weirdly. So I put puzzles into my first campaign, and there was this one player that just figured it out immediately. So my first like 3 puzzles, I thought I was being really clever. I found some awesome puzzle online, I put it into the game, and they just figured it out. And it just completely, like, straight away was like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. So what I did, and it might have even been one of Fred's videos, to be honest. I saw someone on YouTube say that how they make their puzzles is that they don't know the answer themselves. So they put like the star in, I guess. So like there's a door that has all the faces of the moon on it. And then they let the players like think of their own narrative and try stuff. And then if they think, actually, yeah, that's pretty clever, they make that the solution. And I've tried that a few times now, and it has actually worked like really well. Because I was very skeptical when I first heard it. I was like, how does that work? But the players can actually get really creative and impress you. So that's what I do mainly now, is I make puzzles where I don't actually know what the answer to the puzzle is, and I let them think of how to do it, and then they usually come up with something cool, much cooler than what I could probably have thought of.
See, now you just gave that away. Your players are going to see this and they're like, "Oh yeah, you think we're going to do this puzzle now?" That's interesting though. The one thing I'd be afraid of though is like, you're like, they say something and it's like relatively creative, but you're like, I think you can do better, and then they get totally blanked. And you're like, crap. Come up with something, whatever the next thing is, you're gonna win. But they just get discouraged from not getting the answer right.
Yeah, I haven't had that happen yet, but now now you've made me nervous. Oh yeah, Fred said that's sounds like a Wally DM approach to puzzles. That's it. Yeah, it was Wally DM, who I'm pretty sure I saw that from. And yeah, it's worked for me so far. But you're right, I could end up shooting myself in the foot.
Honestly, that sounds fun though. I should do that. Just you come up with like the weirdest thing. In front of you is a hot dog, a whole man, and a goblin doll. What do you do?
Yeah, I have put some really strange ones. I can't think of any of the. I remember there was one where there was a load of petrified humanoids, and then there was like 2 mirrors and a plant or something like that. And and it was really random, and I can't.
Yeah.
It's really annoying. I can't think of what my players tried to do, but I was like, that is much better than anything I could have thought. So yes, you've solved it. But yeah, it's a really good way to do it. I definitely suggest trying it out to anyone who is thinking of doing puzzles. Cool. So if you are getting value from this video, please do give it a like if you're over on YouTube, or consider following me if you are on Twitch. I do appreciate it, and it shows this to more people who might be able to get some value out of this video or ask their own questions and get them sorted as well. So I would appreciate that very much. Okay, on to the next one. So in your homebrew world, what do people in your world believe is in the center of the earth? And this is the Homebreakery asking this question over on Twitter.
So it's, you know, it's really funny that you asked that. Is I was just, for that next homebrew I was telling you about, I was just thinking about that kind of like creation myth and that kind of whole thing. I've done the one of my favorite ones to do is like the back of a turtle, you know, being on the back of a turtle. I've always loved that myth and mythology that involves stuff like that. I also like the dragon, that there's like a dragon egg in the center.
Okay,
but
that's a good one.
If I'm 100% honest, usually I just haven't really thought and gone into that. I will put like, I'll think of like creation myth and stuff like that, but like the center of the world, like a lot of people just tend to take it at like face value. But I do tend to like doing the you know, on the back of a giant turtle or something like that.
Yeah, I included this question because it was something I had never thought of before, and I was like, "This is a really interesting idea, actually." Because I in my homebrew world, I guess it's just the same as our word. There's just the core and then lava and whatnot. Because I hadn't thought of it, but it made me think of ideas of different worlds that have stuff in the middle. So I have heard of like titans. So like in the middle of the world, there is a titan of each of the elements. So there's like an earth titan and stuff like that.
The World of Warcraft, yeah.
Is that World of Warcraft? Is it?
Yeah, that's Azeroth is like the heart of a titan or something like that.
Okay, that's probably where I heard it from. And no spoilers, but there is something quite interesting in the Eternals, the new Marvel film, that it has a bit of this element in as well. But I won't say anything because it's a new film and don't want to spoil it for people.
I've been waiting to watch. I've been wanting to watch it. I finally got to see Shang-Chi. I didn't want to pay for Shang-Chi because it was so close to it releasing. So they just released Shang-Chi, so I finished that. Now we're gonna go see Eternals.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed it. It's got a bit of a bad rap online, but I really enjoyed it. And yeah, there's a little bit of creation myth lore in there as well. I think most people who didn't like it is because it's a very big lore dump of like Marvel lore, like the creation and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think that's why people didn't like it. But
it makes sense. You have to have the one movie to set up the whole next phase. I mean, they're going so big with the next phase. It makes sense they had to have one exposition dump of a movie.
Yeah, and I feel like if you're into like D&D lore and stuff, then you're probably going to like it because I just like lore in general. I remember watching like Skyrim lore videos for hours.
I love lore videos. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever gone down the rabbit hole of like 40K lore. It's dark and so edgy, but I don't. Yes, you seen the Arcane yet? The new League of Legends Arcane. Oh, it's so good. I've never cared about League of Legends ever, and I've the last few days since I've watched Arcane, I've done nothing but watch League of Legends lore videos because Arcane is so good. It's like every aspect of that show is absolutely perfect. And so now I'm interested in League of Legends lore, even though I've literally never cared about League of Legends.
I've played League of Legends for quite a long time, so I need to watch the show. I just haven't got around to it yet. Because, I'll probably understand a lot of the references. And so many people have said it's good. So I need to just watch it, apparently. Cool. Right, let's go on to the next one. So what's the best command you've seen in Dungeons & Dragons campaign of your own? So command spell, that's by Candice Interrupt over on Twitter.
So for
if
the most
any?
part, it's been pretty. Yeah, I would say because guys, I was wondering if you meant command spell. So command spell, I haven't because the thing is with command, as written, it's actually pretty strict. There's very little you can do with it. I think honestly, not to sound like self-serving, but probably my favorite time I've seen it is the time I used it. We had one of our players. He touched a door and had kind of got mind controlled, went into rage, and started attacking us. And so I told him to relax, and then it gave him an extra 2 turns he had to roll will save. And so it gave him an extra couple turns where we could like get safe and he could try to fight off with with the will save to do it. So that's probably my favorite time that I could recall doing it. And that's just, it happened like 2 weeks ago. I can't really think of like a good memorable time because with command self-preservation, if I recall, self-preservation rules out. So you can't, if you tell them to jump off a cliff, they're going to stop before they hit the cliff. So it'd be, I can't personally think of like a really interesting time, but I might be the weird one there.
Well, I couldn't think of a single one, so you beat me because you had one story. I don't think there's ever been like a amazing command moment. It's been used in my games, but it's usually either drop, as in drop to make them drop their weapon,
Yeah.
or it's like flee or halt or and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say anything crazy has come out of the command spell in my games, to be honest.
Yeah, because I feel like I've had more interesting things from charm, and
Yeah, charm and suggestion.
yeah,
Good
as
ones.
opposed to command. Yeah, again, because it really is again as written, it's so limited. Maybe if you homebrewed it to make it more, go jump off a cliff or whatever, like old, Shadow Priest, mind control from WoW or whatever. I'll use WoW a lot for the references, but I can see it being more. But again, they can't jump off a building, they can't kill themselves, they can't kill others of their friends. So it's really just like a 1 round CC type situation.
Yeah, pretty much. It just stops them for 1 round. Cool. And then another question from How to D&D Fred. Do you follow any D&D monster lore YouTubers at all?
Yes, and I apologize. The names are totally escaping me. I follow a couple. How to D&D? I know. I feel like you've put a couple of things out there too. Um, I don't know if any of the channels that's like all they do, but I love watching like Davy Chappie. I love watching his videos when he breaks down a different one, different rune master,
Smith.
Rune Smith. I love
Yeah.
his videos when his basically series,
Yeah.
basically Cobalt, and so that's a great. I love all those ones. There's a couple other guys that I love watching again because like you were talking about earlier. I love the lore stuff. So any of the ones that go into like the lore and like who these different creatures and stuff are, like as far as like what they do, especially more sentient ones like kobolds and goblins and that kind of thing. I eat those up. Yeah, I'm there's this one YouTuber and I feel so bad that I don't remember his name that has a bunch of he's been doing shorts of a bunch of
Okay.
different creatures and it's like an A to Z thing and those have been pretty entertaining and the name is just escaping me and I feel really bad.
Well, the one channel that comes to mind, the biggest one that only does D&D lore, is Mr. Rex. Not sure if you've come across him.
I like Mr.
RHEXX.
X. Yeah. That's I liked some of his stuff.
And then Jordan PH is Silent does quite a few as well. I don't know if you've watched his videos, but I like
I'll
his
have to
as
check
well.
it out.
And then the ones you've done as well. Rune Smith does really good videos, and David Chappie. Fred is saying Steely Sam. Is that the one that does the shorts? A to Z.
Maybe that sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's put Steely Sam. I'll quickly chuck it in and see what comes out. Steely Sam. Oh yeah, he's done quite a few shorts on different stuff, so it might be him. So yeah, check out all of those people that we've spoken about if you are into D&D lore, because they put out a lot of really good content. Cool. Okay, so let's go ahead, and this will be the last question. Let's go with this one. So Shay3181 over on Twitter asks, if you, the real you, yes you, had to be a D&D class from 5e, what would you be and why?
Well, I'm the bear bard, so I feel like I'd have to go with bard. I'm not even saying I'd be a good bard, but I would put my heart out into being that bard. Either that or I played defensive line American football, so but I think barbarian would be the easy answer. But I'd like to think of myself as a bard. I feel like hopefully I can pretend to be entertaining enough to do that.
I feel like with the name Bearbard, you should dip 3 levels into Druid to get the Druid of the Moon Circle, so you can turn into a bear and be a bard.
Well, that's what's this? Everyone thinks that I'm part of this. There's this story. I think it was a 4chan story, Sir Barrington, and everyone keeps asking if that's who I am, and it's not. But it was like basically it was an actual bear who like put all his points into charisma, and so just like BS'd his way into through all these situations, and so like I don't remember what class it was, but like he was like in courts. And he just had high enough charisma that he could just pretend like he's supposed to be there, and everyone just accepted it, even though he couldn't talk or anything like that. And so everyone thinks is like, oh, is this Sir Barrington? So I'm gonna read it on the channel at some point, just as a special thing. But yeah, I'd probably say Bard. I mean, again, I'm the bear Bard, and that's my favorite class to play is Bard. So I've been going through this kick of not playing Bard, so I play everything else because I kept. When I first started stuff like that, I just only played Bard. So I've been forcing myself to play other classes.
Oh, I don't really know what I'd be. Probably something magic-y. Maybe a wizard. I quite like books, so that works. If not a warlock, I'd probably sell myself as a magic.
I can see it happening.
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't be any of the physical ones. I was never good at any sport ever, so I wouldn't be any of the physical ones for sure. It'd have to be one of the more mental ones, I think. Fred also has chucked out all of these for the D&D lore. So there's Steely Sam. Oh yeah, I forgot about AJ Pickett. Actually, I've watched he does really good videos. Mr. X, Jordan, PH Silent, and Dungeon Dad. I don't think I've ever seen.
I've seen some Dungeon Dad. That one's pretty good. I feel like I've seen AJ Pickett's video, and then like, I center click to watch it later, and then I just don't ever watch it later. But I don't know if I've actually watched a video, but I've seen it come up, and I was going to.
Yeah, yeah, he does do pretty good videos. Actually, I forgot about him. I feel like Fred at How to D&D knows every YouTuber ever.
He's got a. Yeah, I love watching his channel actually. So
yeah, he's done some really good stuff. I said last week actually, but Fred did I think it was a really long video on how to run Curse of Strahd, like a DM's guide to running Curse of Strahd. And that helped me loads when I first started playing D&D because I did Curse of Strahd as one of the early modules. So there's some really good videos for any of you out there who are looking to play Curse of Strahd. Go over and watch some of Fred's videos. Cool. It is 1 hour pretty much on the dot. So thank you for coming. Do you want to let everyone know where they can find you? I've put links in the description as well.
Yeah. So I got kind of like a lot of different things. Obviously, YouTube, Bear Bar Tales. Come check it out. I've been really, we've been having a lot of growth on there, and so between the channel and then actually in my community tab, we've been running a choose your own adventure. So make sure to get in there. We can have a lot of fun with that. I'm also on most of the social medias. I'm on Twitter, Facebook. I have a subreddit. I have a Discord, and then I actually have a TikTok. Don't judge me too much. I haven't been able to put too much on there, but I'm going to be putting more short stories on there, under a minute things, no commentary. So I'll keep on doing that. But yeah, you can find all those links on my YouTube channel.
Cool. And yeah, I think the YouTube and the Twitter is down in the description as well. So if you go across to the Twitch YouTube channel, then go to the About section. I'm sure the rest of the links are there. Am I right? Or am I just sending people?
If YouTube has the links to everything, so
Cool.
I'll be getting at some point. I'll get a link tree and put that on Twitter, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Cool. And thank you very much for coming and chatting with us, answering a load of good questions this week as well. I hope it has been enjoyable for you.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun. I appreciate you bringing me on here.
Yeah, not a problem. And if you are watching this after the fact, put any questions you have for next week down in the comments as well, and I will get to them next week. But cool, that is it. So thank you all for coming and watching. Thank you, the Bear Bard, for coming and chatting with me. And I will see you all next week.
Appreciate it.